Chess Coach Andras, his videos are incredible. I wish he would get more views.
International Master Andras Toth is a famous chess coach who's one of the best at explaining chess-related topics. Perhaps because he has also for many years worked as a primary school teacher.
So I guess, that sort of makes sense for me now. I can sort of trace back where your skills are coming from. Because that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, if you can deal with the small kids, you can deal with the chess noobs as well.
In this podcast episode, Andras has shared lots of valuable advice, including some non-obvious things that you should absolutely avoid if you want to improve your chess.
Most amateur players misuse the engine, and the worst part of it is that they don't know that they misuse the engine. That is my number one don't. Do not.
At the end, we've played an exciting blitz game. Do not miss it.
Dude, what was this humble talk about your rating and your knowledge? Like you're 2300. That's nothing to sneeze at, friend. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Hey guys, Andras Toth, which is the way you should pronounce his surname. He just told me a famous chess coach who has been loved by the chess community, and many people have recommended his works, including Hikaru Nakamura, for example, or Anish Giri. Those who know, maybe you see him for the first time, maybe you are a long-time fan. In any case, you will get lots of chess insights and maybe even live insights from this episode. Hi, Andras.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast. I must say that I'm very humbled because you have some impressive guest lists. So to be on the list is already an achievement. It goes on my CV, that's for sure.
Oh, cool. Thanks. I'm a big fan, so it goes on my CV as well. So let's start. I want to focus in this podcast, since you have an invaluable experience as a chess coach and a chess educator. I want to focus on some insights for chess improvers, but not just insights on what to do, because everybody is speaking about this topic, what you should do, but also on what not to do, because this is, I think, the difference maker very often, because people focus on the wrong things or they neglect some things. So I want you to share your wisdom today with me and my subscribers who are of different levels, obviously, but I think many recommendations would be universal. So what would be on your top 10 not to do things when improving in chess?
Top 10? Woof. That's a lot of things to consider. Look, I was thinking about chess today and the current state of chess today versus what it was when I was still actively playing 20 years ago. And one thing that really stands out to me, and I think that a lot of people overlook this, is that chess has become, in general, far more difficult to master than what it used to be, for the sole reason that there are more people playing it, like exponentially more than 20 years ago, right? And so every rating chunk is represented in far greater numbers. And as a result of that, each rating chunk has got their very, very strong cohort where they actually play noticeably better than their rating would indicate. And this is now a trend across all ratings, starting from 1,000 going all the way to 2,200, right? And because of a lot of people started chess during COVID and, past COVID or post-COVID or during COVID, they don't necessarily have this, and I don't want to sound, like the guy who knows it all, but they don't have this wisdom to know that it used to be a lot easier, not anymore. And so I do see a lot of people entering the chess realm, and the first thing they do is that they set numerically measurable goals for them. And I very strongly oppose it, right? So that is my number one don't. Do not set yourself goals right off the bat. Like, I want to reach 1,800 by blah. I want to do 2,000 by this, titles, whatever. Because it's a really, really rocky road. And you very well might set yourself up for failure before you even started. Because once you set that goal, it's very difficult not to look upon it as a failure if you don't meet it. And most people don't understand the difficulty of the goal that we're talking about, right? So if I wanted to pick up running tomorrow, I wouldn't, necessarily start with, I want to run a marathon in 5 years, because it might turn out that I'm not built in a way that is optimal for long distance running. I might hate the, past 10 kilometers feel where I just like fall apart physically, yada, yada, yada. So there is so much going on chess-wise nowadays that, yeah, it's just a very, very difficult game with rating groups increasingly getting better. Like, I was watching today a tournament somewhere in the United States. Unfortunately, I don't remember now where it's at. Might come to me. And someone was teasing Ben Feingold for drawing all his games, right? And I looked at his games, and his opponent's rating average 2000, 2100, right? So you would think that he should walk over them. And I looked at the games, and all of them were fair and square draws. Right? Like, some he might have, been better off playing a bit longer. But like today, I saw that a game he played against an 1800 guy, at no point with black, was better or reaching 0-0. So the opponent from move 1 till handshake had the upper hand on Feingold. And it's not because Ben played poorly. I played the exact same line that he played in that variation. And I'm like, this is it, guys. 1800s don't hang pieces, have really good understanding of positional concepts by far and large. And you really have to go out of your way to beat them. So that would be my number one thing, that people will really come into the game with great expectations and the attitude of, I'm going to achieve X, Y, and Z by whatever time. And I really, really try to stir my students toward goals that are more process-based. It's a cliche, but it becomes so important early on in chess. Like, enjoy the process, enjoy learning, enjoy the lessons. Find joy in a game that you lost, which sounds so paradoxical, but unless you can walk away from a victory with some kind of a positive, you don't have to, be happy and upbeat and open a champagne bottle. But you have to have the ability to go like, yeah, okay, we lost, but that's what we call learning. And so it's all G, because I now know that trick or that idea or that plan or whatever, if people get hung up on numbers and the results, it's gonna be a very bitter end.
Mm-hmm. Let me add, thank you for sharing this. Let me add my 2 cents, my personal experience to support your statement before we move further. I actually want to delve a little bit deeper into the goal setting stuff, because this is I'm a big fan of this. When I was a kid, I took chess not too seriously, but somewhat seriously, and achieved a Russian title of candidate master when I was 13. It's not a FIDE CM, but it's a different one. You have to achieve some norms and stuff. So I was playing on a moderately high level nationally at that time, and then I gave up chess, and I had a rating of 1913. This was like 17 years ago. And actually, I got this rating. There were not many rated tournaments where I grew up. So I played just one rated tournament. I played it horribly. And I gained the rating of 1913, even though it was not like the best tournament of my life. So I was feeling that I should have at least like 2000 plus rating, but I had this rating on the basis of just one rated tournament. And then after that, I pursued other things, entered university, gave up chess completely until I was 29. And at 29, I rediscovered my passion for chess, and I decided to play a couple of tournaments. And I thought, okay, my rating is 1913. I will a little bit prepare. I know that I was not 1913. I was like, by that standards, at least 2000 plus, because at that time, I defeated 2100 plus rated opponents with not much difficulty. So I thought, okay, I have to set myself a goal at least to go to 2000 in a couple of tournaments and stuff like that. It was a couple of years ago. And then I went from 1913 to 1777.
I saw this coming.
Yeah. So this is just to illustrate, because I didn't know what I was getting into. Chess has evolved so much. People have started playing so much better. It's crazy. So now I'm gradually back. I've recently overcome my 1913 rating. Now I'm a little bit higher than that, but still, it's a crazy difficulty.
Yeah, look, to add to that though, so I want to make it clear. It's not a bad idea to have a numeric goal, but it's not like the one and the only measure of success, right? Because in the end of the day, chess is very measurable, right? We have a rating system. Generally speaking, it represents rather well what a player is capable of, especially if they play on a regular basis, right? So you want constant feedback about how you are traveling, but getting hung up on it is the problem. And because that kills the joy of learning, the joy of playing, the joy of everything that is associated with it. If the one and only thing we want is that so badly wanted rating, title, whatever it may be. So it's good to have it every now and then, check in, how am I traveling compared to what I would like to accomplish? But that's just, like it's in the back of your mind that you occasionally check in with whilst you are enjoying the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you also mentioned setting yourself goals that are process oriented. And you mentioned like having joy while playing, even while losing. What other goals would be, because it's like the beginning of the new year. I, for example, tend to set the goals for each year. Last year was pretty good for me. I achieved most of my goals, even chess related. This year, I also set some goals, and I'm also interested in your experience. So what are the process oriented goals? Like do chess, like learn chess a little bit, at least every day or something like this. Like do puzzles 15 minutes per day.
That is very measurable, right? So let's say that we're talking about a player who recognizes tactics as their weak spot. So what sense does it make then to go like, okay, so my goal is 1900? Like, the diagnosis of what doesn't work versus what we are working toward, there's almost no overlap. What we instead should be thinking of is, okay, so what we want to do is that you need to do calculation exercises, which is very different, by the way, from puzzles, because puzzles is just one of the many ways of calculating exercises. But let's go with calculating exercises an hour, let's say every second day. Do that for 6 months as a regular training routine, and have a look then back at how much we have progressed, how we are traveling, what the game analysis. We are still not talking about ratings, whether your rating has gone up from, blah to blah, A to B, but much rather like we have a look at games you played at the beginning of this when we decided that we take up this 1 hour every second day calculating progress or process. And then you look at 6 months later and you go through the games by the played by the student, and hopefully we notice that their tactical awareness is far greater. The number of blunders have been reduced. The number of mistakes identified made by the opponent that we are exploiting now is far greater, yada, yada, yada. All of these translate to rating points, but instead of chasing the rating points, we now have things that we can appreciate, praise the student for. The students, self-esteem can grow, and we see a direct link of work, accomplishment, right? Oh, I saw this motif in one of my flashcards, or I calculated this really well because this is what I have been doing. So, and sometimes, you lose games because of another reason, right? So let's assume that we've spent a lot of time on calculating, but our endgame technique is still lacking. And so we lose the odd game here and there. And the rating, let's say, just plateaus. So now if we look at that 6 month period and we only look at rating to rating, we go like, we've accomplished nothing. Whereas the reality is that our student is now far better at a certain facet of the game. And now we can move on to a new goal, nurture now the lacking endgame technique, not quite dropping the calculation. And so we have got now a really awesome chain of learned, acquired, implemented kind of process. And sometimes the numbers don't immediately do justice to the learning that took place. But in a long run, it's almost inevitable that if you put in the work, especially if the work is adjusted or rather addressed to the needs of the student, it should happen. In the long run, almost certainly the numbers will reflect the work that was put in.
You gave some interesting examples. And also I noticed you say something about flashcards. Do you use them in the in the chess
actually,
training?
it's funny you mentioned that because it just popped up in my mind because so many people do it nowadays. It has become a really, really big trend. I am neither a pro nor a con guy about this. Look, whatever works. If you think that, flashcards are a way for you to keep your mind fresh and, do this repetitive, just pull it out, have a look at it. If you do it, then fine. If not, then put it aside and reflect on why it didn't work. So be it. I really don't necessarily think that there is good or bad ways as long as the chosen exercise is designed to accomplish that certain goal or, address a certain problem. It's a lot of work. That's my only issue with a flashcard is that why don't you just pick up a book from your desk, which is a collection of puzzles rather than cutting and chomping and gluing and sticking. I feel like it's unnecessary energy, time, etc. But if it works for someone, so be it. I don't want to be the party pooper, for sure.
Yeah, sure. So before we move on to other don'ts of chess improvement, I wanted to ask a question that I just recalled, asked of me by my subscriber, which really made me think. He said he's from Russia also, and he said that he has, as a kid, studied chess for some time. Now he wants to go back. And he asked me, Greg, do you know, has chess training progressed with the technologies, with the with the world since back then? So do people still learn chess based on the same Soviet school of chess methodology, or has anything new evolved? Obviously, chess engines, my subscriber knows about them, that you can use them, but has there been any significant progress in the way, in the methods chess coaches use to more effectively teach people chess?
That's such a multi-layered question, or rather my answer will be as usual. Look, first and foremost, I think I will continue here the list of don'ts because it's a very interesting topic and I am very passionate about it, and I think that I am close to being right. I always maintain the right to be wrong about everything I say because I don't necessarily, on the philosopher's stone to be right. But I do think that most amateur player, and the lower you go on the rating range, the more truthful the statement becomes, or more accurate, rather, I should say, is that they misuse the engine. And the worst part of it is that they don't know that they misuse the engine. Well, I suppose there's a definition of it partly, but the what I'm trying to say is that they, and I spoke about it in multiple of my YouTube videos, is that they go through the game review or the game analysis, depending on what platform they are using, doesn't matter, it's the same thing. And they go oh, I blundered here, but they don't necessarily link the mistake made to the underlying thinking process, right? So they don't make that very honest, and that's exactly why they don't do it usually, by the way, and cruel reflection of, I made this mistake because I was thinking blah, blah, blah. And that's a faulty thought process. It takes a man and a half or a lady and a half to go my thinking process is totally flawed and was fundamentally wrong. And I need to rewire that from scratch because that was total nonsense. And that's not how I should have approached this position. Very few people have the mental fortitude to look in the mirror and go wow, that was really not what I should have thought. It's not what you played. What they really don't understand is that the move that is terrible is not the problem. That's not what we need to fix. It's the thinking that has led to you making that mistake, right? It is almost in every single sport. It's like if you hit a tennis ball out, no, but it's not. The problem is not that it went out. That's on the scoreboard now that you lost the point. But what we need to address is that were you late? Was your take back on point? The analogies are quite adequate in my opinion. We need to look deeply into what has led to that outcome. The outcome is no one cares about. We need to figure out analytically what happened on the way to get to that outcome, because that's what we are in control of and that's what we can fix. And this is the issue, that most people, because they don't have good enough chess knowledge, they do not understand the reason or the faulty thinking that has led to said decision. This is something that I keep on repeating and I always feel guilty about it. But I think that this is the reason why for chess improvement, chess coaching, in my opinion, is almost inevitable. Like there are, incredible talents who can just self-teach and learn from the engine and fly sky high, but they are the exceptions to the rule. And if every now and then someone checks in with you and goes like, I think that you misunderstand a certain concept, or clearly this game demonstrates that you don't play energetically enough, or you don't really follow chess principles, whatever. It's so much more insightful than you trying to figure out your mistakes with the engine. And I see people do it all the time. That, the engine said I should have done this. I get it now. No, you don't. What you get now is that you know what the bad move was and you know what the good move would have been. But because of we are here talking more overarching concepts, not like knight f7 instead of knight d7, it's not going to recur again in the exact same position. It's going to recur in a slightly different setting, where again, the thinking process is going to break down the exact same way. The mistake will be repeated, but now it's going to be called knight d5, not knight f7, so we don't make the connection. And so we are repeating mistake after mistake after mistake because the thinking process is not being addressed. Now, the other aspect of this question is going to be a recent story, which really has left a massive mark on how I perceive chess coaching and chess coaching in relation to using the engine. So admittedly, every man and his dog is training with the engine. You can't help but notice that the top players, the top 20, their chess style is so massively influenced by the engine and what the engines indicate. You can't miss it. Like, you have to be blind not to see it. And it's very inspiring because in some ways it shows that we try to emulate what the engines do well. We still keep the human touch. And that is what the epitome of 2800 plus chess is today. However, during the World Championship match in Singapore, I was fortunate enough to have multiple very meaningful discussions with Grandmaster Jakob Olgård, who is definitely one of the most respected chess coaches in the world. Right? And he in fact joined me I was making a chessable course about the World Championship match. So I was basically reviewing every single game, a few puzzles and whatnot. And he joined me for one of the reviews. And before we started recording, we started analyzing the game just so that, we assembled what we wanted to talk about and what were our thoughts. And he said to me that at a certain point, a certain move was played. Of course, I'm looking at the engine of, checking if everything is all right. And he goes like, I don't want to know what the engine is saying. In fact, I don't care, because what I first and foremost want to know when it comes to a certain move is the human thought. Why did Ding Liren think that this was the idea? And it doesn't matter at that point whether it comes from the engine or not, because it's still him who is playing it. And if he cannot justify it to himself, he's not going to play it, right? So he told me, dude, I want to know it. That's like, okay, shut down the engine. Let's figure out, you and I, what the human thought is. Because that is something we can work with. We can now establish that, this was his plan. That's what he wanted to do. And once we figure out what's cooking in a certain position, then it can be extremely productive to turn the engine on and compare and contrast. But it's very, very cool to kind of train yourself into the position in a way so that you are at least, on a certain level of understanding before you turn the machine on, which is going to tell you moves that at times you have no idea, like where would that come from, because you are not accustomed to the position. You haven't engaged with it deeply. You don't have your own thoughts, right? Like, one of the best thing about what he said there is that it provoked me to think and figure out what was going on. So I formulated my own ideas, my own plans, and then it no longer was the, regurgitating what the engine said. I had some ideas, we compared it to the engine, he had some ideas, and the three together created a very interesting debate, discussion a meaningful, mass of moves and ideas. And then we weeded out the garbage, which was mostly mine. We kept the things that were good, which was mostly his and the Angie's. And we had a much better understanding. And more importantly, we could communicate and explain the position so much better, right? So this way, I think, once again, the key is to first deploy your own brain, try to figure out what's going on, and then add the engine on top. So turns out that I said the same thing twice, but it really struck a chord with me when we sat down with Jakob and did that analysis.
Wow, fascinating story. By the way, I'm going to invite him on the podcast as well. Big fan as well.
Okay.
So yeah. About engines and about the World Chess Championship match, I also wanted to give an example of Gukesh, who has been reported to not use any engines before he was a strong player of GM strength. So what do you think about that? It turns out this approach worked out for him just fine.
Look, it's really strange because, of course, there were murmurs among top GMs that, look, I don't even know how to put it so that it doesn't sound accusatory, but there were certain top GMs who suggested that his chess was almost too good to be believable. No, definitely not. And I didn't know this story, by the way, that he wasn't exposed to engines. But I suppose it just goes to show that there are multiple ways to get to mastery and expert level. I do think, though, that nowadays, and perhaps now this is the best way to contradict me, but you would think that nowadays it's very difficult to see how top players can really be top players and remain top players without being influenced by the engine, at least to some degree.
Yeah, obviously. But his coach, I think, told him not to use the engine until he was like a GM. So not top GM, but just 25.
I see. And that I would be fully in favor for. I would absolutely encourage sub 2000 players to don't ever look at the engine. Blunders, right? Look at your blunders, because most of the times you will find sub 2000 blunders are of tactical nature, and they are actually easy to understand. And even so, there is still a fair bit to discuss why they occurred, but sometimes we tend to be a little bit blind to our own mistakes, even if they're quite sizable. So blunder check, I think, is fine. Beyond that, let's leave it to human judgment and don't worry about the engine.
Okay, so what areas have changed then in the chess training, except for the fact that top players obviously cannot now envision their lives without engines. They rely on them very much in their opening prep, etc., etc. Let's speak about mere mortals. So what has changed principally, over the past 20, 30 years in terms of how it is considered most effective to teach and learn chess?
I think what I'm going to say is mostly applicable to the very top, but obviously as you go further down, it still applies, except less. But basically, top level chess has become incredibly concrete, like it has never been before. Every single move and idea is justified by variations, calculations, and evaluations, right? So you go back to the 70s, and it was a regular occurrence that Korchnoi analyzing a game with Portish, there's a bystander grandmaster, right? No grandmaster, not like the janitor of the building, a grandmaster who goes perhaps colleague Korchnoi, you should consider here King G3, to which Korchnoi immediately responded that your colleague is the Grandmaster Damjanovic, which was a very
I know this
famous story because Damjanovic was one of the lowest rated grandmasters at the time. I would like to clarify that I have got nothing to say against GM Damjanovic. But where I was going with this was that people would just brush off ideas on account of what kind of a move is that? Properly educated grandmaster would not even come up with that. And this type of knee-jerk reaction of this is positionally unsound, you were not raised in the proper way, that is not a move, get out of the room, doesn't exist anymore. If nowadays the same conversation took place, they would, not demand, but expect that fair. Okay, show me how it's wrong, and then I will leave the room, but not until. right? So there is now always, like, nothing is off the cards. People are playing the most insane moves. Have you seen A4 yesterday by Nodirbeck?
Yeah. In the French,
I mean,
was
hello,
wow.
textbook case of Koshoi would have told him, leave the room now. Like, you have nothing to do in the same room with respectable grandmasters, right? And now the answer is, really? Okay, mate, show me. What's wrong with A4? And until you prove me that this is wrong, it stays. That is the most important thing. And this is 100% engines. The engines have proven over time that outlandish and crazy moves at times work. But humans, like chess is the game of endless possibilities, right? So what you could do in the 70s, 80s was that you did this natural selection based on chess feel, education, understanding of the game, yada, yada, yada. None of this is calculation, right? So they just reduced the number of good-looking moves based on the set thing, experience, education, whatever. And if a move looked ugly, they just didn't bother. This thing doesn't exist anymore. Not at all. If the engine doesn't prove it wrong, or in fact it proves it quite playable, people jump on the bandwagon and they start playing it like there was no tomorrow, because it has been proven by the greatest god of chess as a playable move. And so we see all kinds of auto openings. And another interesting trend is that as a result of this, by the way, no one really aims for opening advantage anymore. It's absolutely fascinating to me. Like, I was brought up as a chess player in an era where with white, we worked on openings for hours on end to prove that we had a slight edge, right? Like, it was almost like a moral code. We are playing for an advantage, and with black, we are playing for equality. It's not the case anymore. No one plays for an advantage, or they can, but realistically speaking, it's not there. They are playing now for playable positions, complexity, and just stuff that the other guy doesn't know or didn't look at. Where there are 10 moves to be found, that is difficult, because if you don't find it, then that's it. Textbook case for this is, for example, Fabiano's incredible, was it that H4 move that he played a couple of months ago in that English, I think, where he hung a piece on G5? And it's like, it's like you play H4 and it's like minus 0.2, right? So it's not even that great. But you have to play like 10 extremely precise moves by black, or else it's all over. So it's now finding out those positions where if you know it better than the other guy, irrespective of objective evaluation, within a range, of course, like obviously it can't be too bad, it's a go. It's very fascinating. It really is something that I don't think most people would have predicted in the 80s, 90s, that is the direction that professional chess will take.
Yeah, probably upon seeing those H4 or A4s, they would fall off the chairs.
Exactly.
That would be shocking.
Like, they would have been insulted by it. Absolutely 100%. No question.
Okay, so chess has become more concrete. And what about chess coaching? Have the principles remained the same? Has like the bulk of the Soviet school of chess coaching technique remained the same, or like? Look,
to some degree, I would say yes. It depends now the level of the students, right? I now coach a lot of sub 1800s, and it's very clearly principles, because they don't have that deeply enough ingrained so that they could build on that and take it from there. But as for anything above 2000, you simply have to adjust and evolve and follow the trends of what's happening on the top and just do it smaller. So I now also am, trying to enforce my students to acquire this mentality that, like, I don't work with statements anymore. I never really have, but especially now I am very, very, very strict on this, that, this felt like my king was exposed. I'm like, no, I don't tell me that. I don't know what that means. Tell me a line that proves that your king is vulnerable. If you can do that, I am then open to discussing your vulnerable king. I didn't want to play bishop a6 because it looked blah. That doesn't fly anymore. And it teaches, by the way, or rather, it doesn't teach, but it encourages very good habits, which is and this is also a thing that chess has become. It is basically almost like a scientific process of hypothesis, test, and then conclusion, right? So if my hypothesis is that my king is weak, I can't leave it there anymore. It used to be the case. Like, people got away with it. Not anymore. if that's your hypothesis, we need to test it out. So tell me the line, and then the conclusion, the evaluation of your line. And it has still, you find sub 2000, but even sometimes up 2000 levels or above 2000, that the decisions are being made in concrete, calculable positions. By the way, important to add that they just go like, the king is weak. I'm like, no, show me the line that proves it. And it's very confronting, by the way, especially if you tend to have the tendency to, slack out on calculating. But once again, it's a very eye-opening mindset because it's the direct conflict, right? So they want to avoid thinking altogether or not thinking, but calculating. And I'm prompting that, no, that is the only way how we can discuss this. Yeah, it is just the same thing, except the higher you go, the deeper, the more analytical, the more of everything it becomes. But I think the sooner you start this, the better it is.
You also have to overcome your psychological barriers when you are not very self-confident and you leave your kin weak, for example.
To be fair, I used to be the number one, the gold medalist of this kind of, but especially in my active time, right? I used to do this all the time, where I would be like, yeah, White is winning here, or I should be winning here. And they are like, yeah, it's better, but how exactly? And I was like, oh, we'll sort it out. It's okay. Like, I used to be the number one guy guilty of this. I missed out on multiple norms and tournament, victories and whatever, you name it. So I really know how badly it stings when you are too lazy in the calculating department. So it's not like I'm doing it because I enjoy being the bad guy. On the contrary, I have been on the receiving end of this. Didn't work well.
Yeah, me too. So let's come back to the list of don'ts. What next? What would you name?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. I think it's very difficult to find the fine line of how much to play and how much to learn. But I think people tend to overplay nowadays because it's a lot of fun. And also people tend to misdistribute the playing time in terms of bullet, blitz, rapid, long time. And what I mean by that is that about anything that is more than 50% bullet and blitz and less than 50% rapid and long time, in my opinion, is a recipe for disaster. But of course, again, there are exceptions to the rule. Yeah, so you look at Alireza, who essentially became a grandmaster, actually a 2600 GM grandmaster, by doing not a lot more than just grinding blitz, right? So there's always a counterexample, but I still don't think that that's the way to go. Yeah, so unless you think that you are the next Alireza, I think that bullet is a complete ban. Like that thing shouldn't exist for someone who is an improver. And people always tend to misquote my words in this respect, in this regard, that if you want to play bullet, knock yourself out. But if you have a goal of becoming a better player in long-time control chess, also known as chess, then I recommend that you drop bullet, and blitz even should have a particular purpose, which is to practice your openings. Because that is the greatest value of blitz is the volume, right? That you get to play a lot of games, so you are exposed to a great variety of things. So it's easy to find out that, actually, my Dutch is really lacking. I don't remember his theory. So then back to the drawing board, look up your Dutch files, off we go. We have plugged in a hole that when it comes up in the next tournament is no longer a hole. So I do think that people misuse their chess time in general, and they also play the wrong formats too heavily in favor of having fun and also, and I can't blame them, but the shorter the time control, the more addictive it is.
This is like a spiral of addiction when you start playing blitz at night.
Yeah, like a bullet game at the worst case scenario is 2 minutes. Right? So if you have 5 minutes before your bus leaves or your next appointment is up, you can just put it on. And then that kind of mentality, when you have 2-3 hours, hello, that's like bullet heaven. Let's go, baby. And then you just burn 2 hours. Quite likely, it went south, then you raged, you tilted, you whatever, and there was zero meaningful learning taking place. Once again, if you love bullet and you don't want to improve your chess, go to town. But I think chess improvers, not the way to go at all. I think in general, by the way, it's very, very difficult to find a quiet half an hour, especially for adults who are serious about chess and they want to get better. I have all respect the adult improvers who really, have the time and the opportunity and they really sit down and learn by themselves in chess books and coaching, because it's a very difficult thing to juggle with life and family. I mean, I have my own, right? So I know. So I think that we need to value that little time we have for chess and use it the best possible way. It's not exactly a don't, it's a do, but you see how it becomes a don't when I start listing things that people tend to do that have limited value.
What's, in your opinion, the optimal distribution in percentages of your time spent learning and practicing? Obviously, for bullet 0%, but for learning, playing tournaments in particular, I think it's in the category of practice, right, for you?
Yeah. Look, when I was, and perhaps it's irrelevant, but when I was a young, ambitious kid who wanted to be a chess professional, my coach told me that I should be playing at least 6 to 8 tournaments a year. 6 to 8, yeah? 6, less than 6, not good. More than 8, you're probably overcooking it. Between 6 and 8 was the sweet spot, right? But when I say tournament, it meant proper long-time control, FIDE-rated international tournaments. So it wasn't like the local school kids get together and let's figure out who is the best player. So they were all full-time control, FIDE-rated proper tournaments. Now, if an adult improver and an amateur player can afford, and both time and money-wise doing that I think is still the right amount. But I would say, obviously, it's a bit of a tough expectation. I would say, if you can play a long-time control proper tournament once every quarter of a year, you're doing well, right? So that's 4 a year. I think that already gives you a fair bit of material to work with, to identify weaknesses, issues, things that don't work. And then whatever else is left, if you have time to play some rapid tournaments. Online is now, by the way, for that purpose, is a brilliant outlet, and most people tend not to use it. There are so many online arena tournaments for rapid where you can actually find your rating range. So you are playing against similar strength players. People don't tend to do that, at least not in my experience. It's a brilliant learning tool. But to answer your question more specifically, I think that the 60-40 is a good distribution between learning and playing, in favor of learning.
60-40. Okay. So, blitz, you are not as strict as some Soviet coaches to say that it is prohibited, but you should use it in moderation just to train your openings, right?
Yeah, I do think that blitz does have an important role in one's chess growth. If, once again, so the more time you have, the grand total amount of time, the more you have, the less strict, the rules can be, because then we have more to work with. So if you have got 4 hours a day to do chess, I mean, that's almost semi-professional, right? Of course, throw in half an hour of blitz, no worries, even 40 minutes, because it is going to showcase multiple issues in your chess that then we can address in the remaining time. If you have an hour for a day, you played one blitz game, and we burnt like 10% of your time already. That's probably not good value for return, so I do not recommend. Unfortunately, it is what it is. But no, I am not as hardcore as the good old Soviets used to be. So yeah, I think if every now and then throwing in a few blitz games is handy.
Yeah. By the way, how do you yourself cope with online speed chess addiction? Do you have any? No. In fact, on the contrary. A very long time ago, I quit bullet altogether. And a fair while ago, we talk about maybe not quite a year, but about that. But even before that, I hardly played any blitz. So I almost exclusively play rapid. Almost exclusively, right? Part of it, though, is that I reached 2800 on Chess.com with blitz. I thought that that's about 150 higher than where I should really be. So I thought I will cement that in for eternity. I'm not touching that thing ever again. That 2800 is like, like a badge of honor. I'm going to just leave it there forever. But to be fair, rapid is much more enjoyable to me, right? I actually feel like I am closer to playing chess, putting
in thoughts. I don't feel rushed. I feel like I actually have some clarity of thought rather than trying to constantly be up on the clock and using the clock as a weapon. We know all these blitz shenanigans, which are all, by the way, irrelevant skills when it comes to long time control chess, but they are super important in blitz. And also, it's a heap better for my content creation, a word that I absolutely despise, but I will go with it. So that when I create YouTube videos, it's so much easier to explain my thought process, because in a blitz game, by the time I finish a sentence, the time is up. It's just more practical for every possible thing I do. And so I can't remember the last time I played Bullet. I can't remember the last time I played Blitz, but it was a fair while ago. And it's not like that I'm going to return to either. I do enjoy the slower pace of game and the more relaxed mindset that comes with it.
Yeah, me too. But sometimes I hope you will not refuse to play at the end of the podcast, which is a tradition.
Oh, I know that. I was dreading the opportunity, or rather the time when the playing comes. But no. Of course, that I respect traditions as much as the next guy. So no, that's totally fine.
Okay. But before that, we still have time to discuss some more don'ts. So warn my subscribers against some other things they should not do. And me as well. I'm also learning, obviously, from this discussion.
Yeah, I'm running out about the don'ts.
And also maybe some don'ts may relate not to chess improvement, but what you are doing during the game. So this is also a
actually, you know what, I was thinking about this, and I really am hoping that I'm not crossing here sportsmanship issues. But one thing that I did notice lately, and it comes from the fact that many of my students are located in the United States and in Australia. Mm-hmm. And both of these countries are known for their weekend star tournaments, which means that they squeeze an entire tournament into a weekend, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is, to my mind, a crime against chess. But it is what it is. This is how they can do it. At least it's an opportunity for the locals to play. So I'm for it. But also, as it happens to be the case, a lot of my students are not only adults, older adults, if they excuse me saying that. So we're talking 60 plus, right? And these ladies and gentlemen inevitably do get more fatigued and mentally tired by the process of chess game, in an enclosed, oxygen-poor room, then go out, go back in again into the same room, repeat the process. You don't notice it while you are in it. But by the third round on the same day, your brain is just like, whoa. It does not want to play chess. And more importantly, it doesn't do it well at all. So what I started noticing is that my students overall do a lot better, both in terms of score and quality of play, if they take a bye for the last round of the day, right? Now, you obviously have to be very upfront about this, and I think you need to let the arbiter know by a certain time. I don't know the rules and regulations, and if you are to follow this advice, I would also encourage people to do it as soon as possible, because obviously it may impact the outcome of a tournament. So it's better to be very upfront about it and do it as soon as possible, so everyone knows that that guy is not here for round 3.
Mm-hmm. But and you get half a point for a bye in the US.
So I think in most countries you do. In fact, I think it's a FIDE rule that as long as you request it on time,
mm-hmm.
you do get a half a point. But I think there's a limitation of how many buys you can take in a tournament before it becomes you have been just removed from the pairing for that round, which, by the way, is still okay in my book. It's much better to play around fewer and play quality chess and feel happy and fresh about yourself than completely exhaust yourself mentally and be a train wreck by the end of the tournament and play the last 2 rounds with nothing to give, and then walk away from it like, oh, I lost 50 rating points and I only scored 2 out of 7. Yeah, it's because by the end of it, you were completely non-functional, and it's not your fault. It's simply the way it is. So I think it is not necessarily a bad thing to consider when playing weekenders. Know your limitations, know when you tend to tip over where things are not going well at all, and just take a bye. and, enjoy a lovely evening, have a look at your games or go for a walk, refresh, reload, recharge, and go back fresh again. And you will find that that's a massive life changer in terms of chess and the enjoyment and also the performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised. Recently, I wanted to play in a tournament here in Kazakhstan, where I currently live, and they didn't have buys, even though they had 2 rounds per day. So maybe it's not a universal system, but yeah, this sounds very sensible, especially for elderly people.
I feel a bit iffy about this because if everyone followed this advice, then no one would play last round on the first day, right? So it is a bit on the dodgy side of things. It's allowed by the rules. And I mostly recommend it to people who tend to be more fatigued. And I do think genuinely that it does come also with age. I don't mean any disrespect. I notice it on myself too. I am no longer as sharp at 9 o'clock as I used to be 20 years ago. So it is what it is.
Yeah, so we return to the topic of importance of physical stamina and doing sports, working out. If you want to be good at chess, this is very important, of course. So
indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So taking a bite is a nice life hack. What else?
Start early. Yeah. I think people don't understand that. I think it's applicable, by the way, to any sport and perhaps even academia, but I don't necessarily have enough knowledge and sample size to say that. But I think the later you start something that requires so much mental focus, energy, understanding, learning, the whole lot. The earlier you start, the smoother the journey. That is not to say that if you are 40 and you are listening to this podcast and you are thinking about picking up chess, I'm telling you not to. What I'm telling you is that in that case, you should be realistic about how bumpy of a ride it would be or will be compared to what it would have been if you had started at 10. Now, since you didn't, there is nothing we can do. You will start at 40, and I'm very happy for, welcoming that next member in the chess community. Awesome. But know that this is going to be a bumpy ride and nothing is going to come to you as easily as it does come to a 10-year-old kid. And there are lots of debates on the various social media outlets about this. And I don't understand and know the science of it. I don't pretend to know it. In fact, the science seems to contradict some of what I'm saying. But it appears that kids learn chess, but pretty much everything, a lot more fluently, a lot faster. The retaining is a lot better. The fluency is a lot better. The whole shebang is just, not even comparable. I don't want to go into the science, but it's just accept it. And I think that is the best many can do. And I do that too with a lot of things that I do outside of chess, that if I pick up a new thing, I just embrace the fact that it's probably not going to be as easy as it would have been back in the day.
Yeah, and you are talking from ample personal experience, teaching a lot of kids at primary school. So you know how their brains...
Look, I don't want to claim that I'm an expert of the area, but I happen to be a primary school teacher. I have taught a lot, right? So I have spent 10 years at least. In fact, more because loosely, but I still teach here and there a couple of days every year. I also had a lot of junior students, right? So I do see how progress is being made with younger and older students. And again, it's not to say that all the older ones can't very rapidly improve, because they can. The old one will do it. But, if you look at large samples, it's not going to be pretty.
I wanted to discuss one more topic in this podcast, literature. I know that you have majored in it at university. And it's fascinating that there are some chess players with backgrounds in some mathematical stuff, like, for example, MVL, some people of hard sciences, and there are some people of letters, so to say, linguistics, literature, and you are one of them. Do you think it somehow has influenced your chess style and way of thinking?
I do.
How?
I'm so glad that you stirred this whole topic to this direction, because I was going to do it for you if you didn't. But this way it sounds so much more organic. So when you ask the people of the street what science they would associate chess with the most, 11 out of 10 will tell you maths, right?
Yeah.
And to a very large degree, this makes a lot of sense because there is an incredible number of things in chess that is calculable, measurable, geometrically measurable. In fact, it displays a beautiful wide range of geometrical features, patterns, the lot. There is a lot in chess that is mathematics, right? What people don't necessarily realize when they make that statement is that the maths that is relevant to chess is incredibly low level, right? So basically what a year 5 kid that's 11 years old learns about mathematics in primary school is already in most facets way more complex than the mathematics that is applicable to the chessboard, right? So what mathematics we need is a calculating ability, which is not unique to chess, or it's actually probably more unique to maths, right? It's to be able to quickly, rapidly do. In maths, it would be sums in or whatever, similar to that, or times tables. And in chess, it's just the I go there, they go there, although that already has a fair bit to do with visualization, right? But understanding the value of the pieces, understanding the geometry of the board, how a diagonal works, how long it takes to get onto a certain file, these things. It's very basic maths, right? I know it because I'm not good at maths. And whilst many could argue that I'm not very good at chess either, but I'm somewhat decent, right? And I have no problem with understanding the mathematics of chess and that basic level of maths either. However, when it comes to understanding far deeper concepts in chess, the less quantifiable ones, the ones that are more obscure, when you hear a chess player say that white's pieces are so harmoniously organized in this position, there is absolutely no way that this attack is not going to break through, because you look at the marvelous piece formation there. To be able to identify that has absolute zero, none, nada, zilch to do with mathematics or algebra or this kind of scientific thinking. It's 100% the realm of the arts. Whether you want to call it, I think the best analogy is music, but even literature and, whatever other art forms appeal to you is more relevant if you have a bit of a feel for that, the same way how it's a feel, right? I think it was Anthony Miles who said that chess is a feel. Like when you feel that certain pieces are in a way, you know that you are already, hugging the trophy because this game is over. And you haven't calculated a single move. Right? Like there is a beautiful short video about Boris Spassky analyzing a game. And at one point, I absolutely love this. I can't mimic the hand motion well enough, but basically he looks up to the guy. I don't remember who he does it with. And all he says is this. He just puts his hands together like this and he motions them forward. And that hand motion just translates simply to, mate, you can't stop this. I'm coming at ya and you are dead. It's over.
Yeah.
Right? No moves, no lines, the things that I'm preaching against, by the way. It's just, he just looks at it and understands that the way this thing is set up, you are done for, buddy. And by the way, this is the kind of understanding that I was referring to back in the 70s when that was the only measure of understanding chess versus the more scientific one. But still, this is a very, very much needed, required, and underappreciated aspect of chess. Levon Aronian often talks about this, him being, by the way, another guy who is far more artistically and humanities oriented and driven than science. And he talks about it probably a lot more nicely and with a lot more passion and a lot more clarity. But what he's saying is identical to what I'm telling you, that a very nicely played chess game, when you play through a masterpiece by Morphy or Tal or Kasparov or Anand or whoever or Karpov, just to mention a different style, the best analogy to that is not a mathematical equation that is beautifully broken down for you step by step until we figure out that x equals 7. No. What that feels like is Mozart's Spring. That every single chord, every single instrument, every single action in that piece of music is just divine. It's incomparable. Like it is just perfection and nothing could be done to that to make it better. And you look at Paul Morphy against the Consultants game and you play through it and you just go like, this is a piece of art. and you don't think of the maths, although obviously it was involved in the making to some degree. And by the way, a lot of music is maths too, for the record. Like, you cannot be a musician, like, not even close, if you don't understand basic maths. So again, it's interesting that at the very baby level, the very bottom, it's based on the maths, and you need to acknowledge that. But above a certain level, when we leave that behind, the real craft comes up when it becomes art. And that's, to me, is a very strong connection between my more humanities-driven side, the literature, to some degree the music too, and chess.
Very, very nice and eloquent speech you gave.
Thank you.
Thank you for it.
Practice that. Spare of a moment.
Many things come to mind here, especially the fact that you linked maths and music. And I think the ancient mathematicians very often were musicians as well, like in the ancient Greece. And also some chess champions were people of art, like Smyslov, for example.
Of course. And the list goes on, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. By the way, linguistics also is very, very heavily based on mathematics. Something that shocked me when I first was faced with the fact that, wow, this is very mathematical. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can, and I definitely would love to have a part 2 sometime in the future. But for this one, I think let's wrap it up with a blitz game as usual. Our tradition is for me to get destroyed by my guests. Well, usually it happens.
I don't know about that, friend, but thank you. No pressure put on me, right?
So usually grandmasters give me time odds of 1 against 5. You are obviously a very strong international master, so I don't know what would be comfortable for you.
I will obey the rules. You can set them. And that's that's not confidence talking in me, by the way. 3-5 I'm happy with, if that's you think is fair.
3-5? Okay, sure.
All right, so maybe you can ask a quick question while I'm waiting for the clock to roll down, and then we can keep up.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and you have a person who wants to learn more about chess. What will you tell them?
Oh, wait, there is a problem. I need to play another move before it's auto abort, but I will take care of it. 2 minutes to learn about chess, right? Well, start with the basics and read books. I really do believe that the initial steps of a chess journey should not take place on any other platform but books. Books are beautiful. Read chess books. It's such a great way to engage with the game, with different people who have different views on the game, or rather different ways of presentation. Not that I want to blow my own trumpet, but on my YouTube channel, I do have actually 2 videos dedicated to books that I recommend to certain rating ranges. And the beginner bunch has a fair number of book recommendations there that I think are really, really cool for people to start the game. Nowadays, it hardly ever happens. Almost everyone who picks up the game picks it up because they bump into Levy or Hikaru or Anna Kramling or the greatest or the most successful streamers and YouTubers, and they watch their videos and then they jump on the bandwagon. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's potentially a little bit more, I really need to be careful with how I word this. Educational. I think that's what I would go with. It's just books are, books that were designed to drag you in, I think are a better platform to actually pull you in than a random YouTube video. And I am a YouTuber, so I'm talking against myself, but I do think that books have that power to really pull you in. All right, I'm down to 3, so now I'm actually good to go.
Okay, let's go. By the way, I really recommend Andras's channel, and he has also videos on chess books that he recommends. So obviously, you should go check it out. We will link it in the description.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to say that, by the way, to plug my stuff. So I know it sounds now like I did, but that was not the number one intention.
Okay.
Dude, what was this humble talk about your rating and your knowledge? Like you're 2300. That's nothing to sneeze at, friend. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Thanks.
And I'm sure that you're climbing the ladder like there was no tomorrow.
I'm trying to. Okay. I don't remember the exact
I
line
hope me
here.
talking is distracting you, by the way. That's a ploy.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay, I think I did something stupid probably, but okay, whatever. Definitely I should update my opening knowledge in this line.
I think I need to do the same too.
Mhm. Yeah. What did I do? Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let's go.
Oh, I forgot that I have no time for this game. I'm being a bit too cash. Oh, I accidentally pre-moved c5 instead of the retake. You had a 1 millisecond win there. Ooh. Pre-move has never been my forte. Yeah, I forgot to play 9g3 just then.
I forgot that you could play it. Okay, now this. Not pleasant. Okay. Have to go for broke.
Yeah.
Probably not enough.
Don't give up, you might find me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ah, nice. Check, check, check. Okay. Okay. I resign. The attack did not work out. Yeah, but it was
a fun game,
interesting.
though. I wasn't sure about the opening phase. I think g5 was inaccurate, but I also think I misresponded. I had some memories of losing a few games. It turns out that g5 is actually theory.
Yeah, I remember that g5 is theory, but I was reluctant to play it because I didn't like the way it looked.
Yeah.
So
Look, as a King's Indian player myself, I don't like the g5 line. So as best as I can, I avoid these. But you know why it's really embarrassing? Because this line is in my chessable course.
So yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
So thanks, Andras.
No, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with you. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and guys, if you want part 2, please do drop a comment, and maybe we will do it in several months. And don't forget to check out Andras's content.
Thank you so much.
Like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Yeah, thanks.